so quiet. I give up. Last week it was loud as Hades, and now this week it's acting completely stupid. Oh, I don't understand. Let me see what my music or my sound settings are. What? I don't know. Is that what is going on now? All right, hold on. I'm glad I saw this, before. Yeah, okay. I don't understand it. Why is my mic so hello? Hmm. Well, give me a minute because yeah, the sound is very low and it's like the. Is that better? No, it's not. Oh boy, here we go. Let's see. Channels, two, microphone, condenser, level. A momento. Is this? That's no better. I don't understand what's going on. This makes absolutely no sense why this mic was working perfectly fine last week, and now this week it is screwed up. Hmm. All right, let me switch mics. Let's see how. Oh yeah, there we go. Yeah, this other mic is I don't know what its deal is, but it's been going haywire. Like I didn't use it for a long time, and then I used it last week, and now it's right back to acting stupid again. So that one's getting retired out because yeah. Well, I'm glad I wasted everybody's time for 5 minutes to. Well, at least I didn't start recording right off the bat. But thanks everybody for your input to let me know that things weren't sounding quite right. All right. With that being said, as you can see in the description, you won't see much of my face tonight, um, because after listening to one of Scott Horton's past podcasts, which they recorded at Freedom Fest, and his speech on Waco, I'm gonna play the YouTube video, um, so that everybody can see it, and so it'll be up full screen here, and That way you don't have to look at my ugly mug while we're watching. This is such a great speech, and he did such a fantastic job at laying out the events. He references a documentary called Waco Rules of Engagement. If you haven't seen that, I would suggest you watch that documentary. It's about 2 hours and 45 minutes long. It'll make you mad as hell, but I suggest that you watch it. So before I go any farther, let me start the recording, and then we'll get right into Scott Horton's What You Need to Know About Waco speech.
In the restaurant of life, we're putting freedom back on the menu. It's the Missouri Liberty Report with John Williams, working with grassroots organizations and legislatures to make Missouri the freest state in the nation. Let freedom ring.
All right, folks, and we are back with another edition of the Missouri Liberty Report. So this week, I'm featuring some audio from Scott Horton, which you can find this on YouTube. You can find it also on his podcast, The Scott Horton Show. It's called What You Need to Know About Waco. So look that up on YouTube if you'd like. If you're watching a live stream or you come in and watch the live stream, you will see I'm going to post the video up on the live screen channel here. And so nobody's going to look at my ugly mug. They're going to see Scott Horton presenting this amazing speech on the massacre in Waco 30 years ago. Now, excuse me, some people might say, well, John, why are you playing something from 30 years ago? Because I want people to understand what the state is capable of. What these alphabet agencies will do to make themselves seem relevant, to make the public believe that they are a necessary evil. And they're not, but that's what they wanted to prove here. And they trampled all over the rights of 80-plus Branch Davidians in Mount Carmel and Waco, Texas. So, okay, for those of you in the KUYK audience, before I kick this off, because you're going to miss about probably 5-6 minutes of it. If you want to hear the end of it, please check out Missouri Liberty Report Plus, just about anywhere you get your podcast, if you want to hear the tail end of this speech. So let me get it up on the screen here. And then I'm just going to start playing it. And it's about, it's 57 minutes long. And I'm just going to let it play out. And then we'll come back, kind of give you some thoughts on it. And, but again, this is hard to listen to because, some of us know exactly what they did. And the details can make you very angry about it should make you angry. So it makes it hard to keep your anger suppressed. When I watch the documentary, I watch it on my phone with a pair of Bluetooth headphones, and I told my wife, I said, next time I watch something, I'm watching it on my computer because I got so mad I just wanted to throw my phone across the room. So let me get to this. Let's play this speech, and then we'll come back. Like I said, about 57 minutes, Scott Horton, What You Need to Know About Waco.
Hi, thanks you guys. Really appreciate that. Okay, so this speech is about the Waco massacre 30 years ago. And I've never really given this as a speech before, although I sure have presented it a lot of times on the radio, including just a couple of weeks ago. I went to LA and I sat down with the guy that produced the best documentary about Waco. His name is Dan Gifford, and the movie is called Waco, The Rules of Engagement. And David Hardy, who wrote the best book about Waco called This Is Not an Assault. And I sat down with them for 2 days and a morning and interviewed them about the entire story all the way through, and then plus interspliced clips with religious experts, gun experts, infrared experts, and the best journalists, and all of that. The entire thing, edited down, is 13 hours long. But it's the 30th anniversary, and I decided that somebody's got to do it. There are 3 new books out that basically represent the ATF's point of view. There's a new documentary that they put out on Netflix that, again, emphasizes the ATF's point of view. And I thought, and I had a conversation with Dan Gifford that we really shouldn't let them get away with that. So as long as they're going to exploit the anniversary to, reestablish their narrative, then I think those of us who know better should, live up to our obligation to tell a different version of what happened there. So, and I guess at the end I'll talk about why I think this is still important, because after all, I was 16 years old 30 years ago when it happened. And so what the hell is the point anyway? All right, so first of all, this story is pretty commonly known, although I know that there are some young people here. And I spoke to a couple earlier who had never heard of the Waco incident in any context whatsoever. So I'll try to not assume how much knowledge I'll have. But the common story, of course, is that this very culty group, much like Jim Jones or the Charles Manson cult or something like that, got into a conflict with the ATF when they ambushed them one sunny Sunday morning, and then they later killed themselves in a mass suicide by fire, leaving the FBI very upset. And that's, essentially the common story, as told by TV and, received conventional wisdom. Again, retold in this latest documentary on Netflix. But it does raise the question of who were these people, first of all, and what were they doing there in this? It is a strange building. TV and the government, of course, insist we call it a compound. Pretend that there's a wall around it, even though there was no wall. Pretend that it was multiple buildings, even though there were no multiple buildings, and it's actually not a compound, but they demanded that we call their house a compound to sort of try to militarize the situation from the very beginning. And what it really was is sort of like a redneck mansion, right? It was a giant plywood and sheetrock house where somewhere like 120 people lived. And it was, sort of a commune, and it was their church and their dormitory where they lived. The sect had been there they'd been in Waco since the 1930s, I believe, and they had been at this property at Mount Carmel since the 1950s. So this group had long predated their leader, David Koresh. And essentially it was a break-off group from the Seventh-day Adventists. And the Adventists are Protestant Christians who emphasize the book of Revelations and the end times and the 7 seals and all this kind of thing, founded in the mid-19th century. And by the time you get to the Branch Davidians, this is, I think, a break-off group of a break-off group. Maybe add one more in there. And this is something that's very common in American religious history, and especially among, lower social class Protestant sects, that a lot of times they divide off into much smaller and smaller separate groups. And I guess to put all the cards on the table here, is an important part of the story, certainly from the government's point of view, was that the leader of the Branch Davidians, Vernon Howell, a.k.a. David Koresh, was not a very good guy. He clearly was exploiting his position of power over these people. He wasn't only their minister. He claimed to be foretold in the Bible as the final Lamb of God who will come and interpret the 7 seals before the end of the world. And so, quite contrary to claims by the FBI and the television media, especially at the time, he never claimed to be Jesus. They were Christians and worshiped Jesus. He claimed to be this other figure prophesied in some of the Bible passages, who had the special talent to interpret the seals. And then he used his followers' belief in that really to exploit them. He was taking advantage of very young kids, not prepubescent, but right at the line, young girls. And even though it's legal in the state of Texas, or at least it was then, I'm not sure now, but it was legal to marry 14-year-olds with parental consent in Texas at the time. He was clearly guilty of statutory rape, marrying, quote unquote, and having sex with girls as young as 12 and 13 years old. And he was also taking the wives of his followers and saying that, well, it says here in the Bible that these should live as celibates, and the Lamb should be able to create this ruling council of 24 children to take over the planet after Christ returns and whatever, and these are going to be my 24 children and all this. So by telling the people this and convincing them this, he was taking advantage of his followers' wives and young girls. That much is true. And he was guilty of statutory rape, and if he'd been convicted for it, he probably would have gone to the penitentiary for it in the state of Texas. It's not a federal crime. There's nothing that has no part of David Koresh's sins against his own followers, in which he didn't sin against anyone else, but no part of what he did against his own people there that we would consider transgressions, whether they thought so or not. None of that has anything to do with federal law whatsoever. And any mention of that, frankly, is a red herring by the war party, who uses that as an excuse to demonize not just Koresh, but then, of course, all of his followers as bad people and people who, therefore, aren't worth protecting. And there's a huge part of their narrative. But the charge was a gun charge. What they did was they said that this group was stockpiling all these weapons in preparation for Armageddon. They were going to take all these rifles and they were going to march on downtown Waco and take the place over and kill everybody, and next thing you know, they'll be rolling on Saudi Arabia and guess. But that was the threat. And the reality was, the only reason the Davidians were interested in guns is because it was a business. It wasn't part of their religious beliefs at all, and in fact, as I recently learned, they weren't even interested in guns at all until 1991, 2 years before. This group that had been around all this time. And the only reason they became interested in guns was because a friend of theirs, who was not a Davidian, but was interested and was sort of a fellow traveler with them, owned a gun business and recommended to them that, hey, don't you know the Democrats are getting elected? You should buy AR-15s and other semi-automatic rifles in quantity, wait till the Democrats pass their assault weapons ban, and then sell them at a higher price. And that was the only reason they did it. It was simply an investment, as so many libertarians do when Democrats seem like they're going to win. It's time to invest in rifles that are and ammunition that are about to go up in value. And that was the basis of it. And in fact, they had a thriving gun business where they would go to gun shows. And so that massive stockpile of weapons that the government said was for violence was really just an inventory for their business. They were no more interested in murdering anyone than all the people at the Pork Fest here this week walking around with guns on their hips. It had nothing to do with that. Now, if you're a liberal Democrat from Washington, D.C., you might not understand that Texans are just into guns. We don't consider them murder weapons at all. That's not what they're for. They're for fun and for self-defense and for keeping tyranny at bay for some day that never comes. But they're not for initiating a violent act. What, are you crazy? And this is a Christian group. And none of them were in trouble with the law for any reason. They try to conflate the Branch Davidians with like the Charles Manson cult. But the Charles Manson cult was pure criminality from beginning to end. And if you read Darryl Cooper or listen to that podcast, you find out all about how the government was aiding and abetting the Manson cult all along as part of their fun and games in that era. But the Branch Davidians were nothing like that. None of them had criminal records, or certainly, nothing current and nothing violent, nothing like that whatsoever. They're decent folks. That's all they were. But the ATF essentially had a problem of public relations. Now, they had been caught at what was called the Good Old Boys Roundup. And they had been filmed, and there were photographs of all these ATF agents posing in front of a Confederate flag, and I'm pretty sure not in a fun-loving General Lee, the orange Dodge Challenger kind of a way, but more like actual really hate black people kind of a way. And they were selling N-word hunting licenses at this rally. And they had made 60 Minutes. Did a big presentation on it. They were also being sued for sexual harassment and racial harassment of female and black employees of the ATF. And I know y'all are familiar, at least superficially, with what had happened at Ruby Ridge in the summer of 1992. It was really the federal marshals that killed the boy, and it was the FBI hostage rescue team that killed the wife. But it was the ATF that set Randy Weaver up in the first place and got the whole thing kicked off. So among the fraternity of federal police agencies, ATF got the blame for that. Now, when Clinton was running for president, some of you oldsters might remember that Al Gore had this gimmick called reinventing government. We're going to cut waste, fraud, and abuse, right? The margin, in other words, maybe nothing. But one of his ideas for reinventing government was, let's abolish the ATF, or let's take it from the Treasury Department and give it to justice. Well, the ATF is already the redheaded stepchild compared to the FBI. But if they were taken away from the Treasury Department and put at the Justice Department, they would basically be hunting moonshiners only, and the FBI and those guys would have just taken all of their authority away. And so this was an absolute crisis, not for America, but for the BATF. So they needed a public relations stunt. This is after 12 years of Reagan and Bush. And now the pendulum's swinging the other way, and it was 1993 era version of woke, political correctness at that time. Everything was recycling and Captain Planet and baby blue UN flags and, Bill Clinton and his feminist co-president wife who's coming into power at all this time. And so at ATF, they said, we got to impress these Democrats. And here's how we'll do it. We'll pick on these mullet-headed rednecks out in the country. Even though they're the ones at the redneck rally selling N-word hunting licenses. They're going to find some right-wingers to beat up on to impress the Democrats. And they had an appropriations hearing coming up in just 2 weeks. That's why the raid on the Branch Davidians was called Operation Showtime. This wasn't about David Koresh. It wasn't about guns. It was about the power of these bureaucrats to maintain their power. Simple as that. Now, the investigation of the Davidians was an absolute farce. Again, they were completely innocent of any crime. If they were guilty of any offenses, it's possible that they owed a $200 tax. There is some evidence and some admission and reason to believe that they did have a few fully automatic rifles on their premises at the time. Now again, if you're a liberal Democrat from Washington, D.C., you might not understand that that's perfectly legal if you pay your $200 tax for your machine gun license. That's the law. In fact, in case I forget, I'll say now, after this whole thing was over, Koresh's lawyer asked the federal prosecutor, if you guys had proverbially just gotten Koresh while he was out jogging or shopping at Walmart, as everybody says, and he had been found guilty on all the original charges in the search warrant, what would he have been facing? And the federal prosecutor said about 5 years probation. So that's all it was. It's a technical violation, not a crime, an offense against a state edict was all. But man, you should read that warrant. And we have it in the show notes of the recent podcast. It is really nothing but an exercise in conspiracy theory, truth or crap. They say, well, this Branch Davidian got caught with pot at the Mexican border in 1983. And this Branch Davidian got caught with pot at the Canadian border in 1985. And the UPS man says that they got some beakers in the mail. So we're pretty sure they're running a methamphetamine lab. It all fits, like Russiagate. And it's the same with the gun charges. They say, well, the UPS man found some dummy hand grenades. But that's exactly what they were, dummy hand grenades. You know, like a pineapple hand grenade from the old Vietnam War movies, right? But there's no gunpowder in them. And what the Davidians were doing with them was they were making novelties. You may have seen these at a gun shop. It says complaint department, take a number, but you have to pull the pin from the grenade to take a number. Hilarious, right? 80-something people died over that because the UPS guy called the cops, and the cops called the ATF, and they opened up this investigation. It's one of the avenues that this investigation started. But if you read the warrant, it's nothing but tiny little tidbits of nothing. No honest judge could read that warrant and say, you have demonstrated probable cause that you're going to find evidence of a crime if you raid this place. There was nothing like that in there. It was just a bunch of crap. And it was full of mistakes, which demonstrated that they were in a real hurry. They had not investigated a case, found that they had probable cause to believe there were crimes, and then had to go and arrest the perpetrators and enforce the law like in their writ. It wasn't like that. They needed a stunt, and they found somebody to beat up on, so now they had to build a case, which is exactly what they did. And in fact, if you watch the documentary, Waco, The Rules of Engagement, you can see there's a clip from the congressional footage where the friend that I mentioned who got them into the gun business, his name was Henry McMahon. And he had a retail store, I'm almost certain, had a retail store with a front door where he bought and sold guns. And one time the ATF came to his store and started asking about David Koresh. So McMahon, I don't know, maybe being a loyal friend, went in the back and got on the phone and called David Koresh and said, hey, David, I got the ATF right here, and they're asking about your guns. And Koresh said, well, send them on over. And I know this because we have the testimony from Henry McMahon before Congress, but I also just interviewed Paul Fatta, the surviving Branch Davidian, who was standing right next to David Koresh on the other side of the phone call. And David said, send them on out. We'd be happy to show them all of our weapons. And they said, no, no, don't go, don't go. And then they got so mad at Henry McMahon. What are you doing? You could have blown our whole thing. We didn't tell you to do that. They wanted a raid. They didn't want to show up invited to inspect. Then they sent an undercover agent, not an informant, but an actual agent of the ATF named Robert Rodriguez. And they sent him undercover inside the Branch Davidians for weeks. And they all knew he was a cop. And they told him over and over again, no problem. And they just tried to teach him the Bible and win him over. And he reported back to the ATF that these people really aren't bad people. And they said, see, they're getting you too, huh? In the morning of the raid, Robert Rodriguez was there. And what happened was the ATF had notified all the media to be there. Something big's going to happen at Waco. Gave them the address and everything. Well, the cameramen from KWTX NBC Waco were already there in the front yard, waiting for the shootout to start. The mailman gets stopped by, I forget if it was a federal cop, I believe it was a federal cop, and he says, hey, you better get out of here. There's about to be a shootout out at that cult compound over there. But the mailman was David Jones. He was a member of the group. So he went home and told them, there's about to be a raid. So, and I'm sorry, I forgot, I have to say, 9 days before, Robert Rodriguez and two of the other undercover ATF agents, not informants, but full-bore cops, they came to the Branch Davidians and said, hey, do you guys want to go shooting? They brought the guns, the cops. The Davidians brought the ammo. And the cops handed David Koresh their gun, I believe, I forgot exactly, I think a .38, and an AR-15 to shoot. David Koresh shot their guns and handed them back. And they said, hey, good shooting. No problem. So that's what the ATF agents actually thought of David Koresh. They actually thought that he was not dangerous at all. They were perfectly happy to hand him an AR-15 with a full magazine to shoot. He's having a good time. So that morning, the cameraman's there. David Jones, the mailman, is warned. The element of surprise is lost. And you'll hear this from the ATF agents now. They'll even throw their bosses under the bus and say they knew the element of surprise was lost and they sent us anyway and they shouldn't have done that. And that's true, they shouldn't have. And the element of surprise was lost, and that's a pretty crazy way to launch a massive SWAT raid. But you see, baked in there is a lie. That's why the Branch Davidians ambushed us and killed us, because they were ready for us, because the element of surprise had been lost. And if only it hadn't been, then the raid would have been a great success. But that's just not true. It's interesting the way they're able to sneak that argument in with the element of the surprise being lost in this story. The cops pulled up, and they're in 2 big cattle trailers covered in tarps. One of the names for it was Operation Trojan Horse. Somehow they're supposed to look like they're lost or something, turning around in the Davidians' driveway, I don't know. They have 2 big cattle trailers full of cops. It was something like 75 ATF agents. After about an hour-and-a-half gun battle, 4 of them had been killed. That is proof right there that it was not an ambush. 2 of them died on the roof, may have been shot by friendly fire, although that's not entirely clear. Certainly one ATF agent was shot by friendly fire. I don't think he was killed, though. And one of the agents who was killed was in the front, and this is according to their own version of the story, after several minutes of gunfire at the front before this agent was killed. And I'm sorry, I don't know the location of the 4th. But the fact that they did not take massive casualties, wounds, or deaths in the initial minutes of the raid is proof that it was not an ambush. And there's absolute multiple witness, 10 different people, including, I believe, some of the ATF agents, admitted that David Koresh came to the door, opened the door, and some say even came outside, and said, whoa, stop, there's women and children in here. And they opened fire. They shot the dogs, they shot Koresh in the side and in the hand, I believe, and then one of the bullets went under his arm and shot his father-in-law in the sternum. And he ran back inside, and the ATF just opened up on the place. And you can see in their own footage, no, you can't see in their own footage, they destroyed all that and lied about it. But you can see in the news footage where the cops are just absolutely opening up mag dump at walls, at windows that they cannot see in, and they don't know who's in there. They do know that there are women and children in there by the scores, and they're blindly firing through the walls, emptying their magazines in there. They killed 6 Branch Davidians in the raid, and I forgot how many they wounded, 17 or something like that. 2 of the killed Branch Davidians almost certainly were killed by National Guard helicopters. Texas National Guard helicopters on loan from the Texas government to the ATF in the name of the war on drugs, in the name of the outright lie that the Branch Davidians had a meth lab in there, or that any of them were criminals or involved in the drug trade in any way whatsoever, or even consuming illegal drugs in any way. And under that excuse, they used helicopters, Hueys, from Vietnam, that they came and killed Winston Blake as he sat on his bed eating breakfast, and killed, I'm so sorry, the name of the guy is on the tip of my tongue, who was essentially working, I believe, scraping rust in the water tower, and who went up to see what was going on. And you can see in Rules of Engagement, the helicopter flies by as he drops to the deck. And it is possible that he was shot by a sniper from the ground and that the helicopter flying by is just a coincidence there, but that's what the footage shows. And now, if you watch the recent documentary on Netflix, or if you watch recent interviews of the ATF agents telling their story here, it's just completely preposterous. They say that the Branch Davidians had 50 caliber machine guns. That from the moment that they pulled up, the Branch Davidians opened up with a cascade of fully automatic weapons fire. In an interview with KWTX, an ATF agent claimed that the Branch Davidians fired 100,000 rounds that day. Or, no, I'm sorry. He says they fired over 10,000 and that the ATF fired 1,000. I believe the ATF fired 1,000. I don't believe the Branch Davidians fired even that many. When you look at how many ATF agents were engaged and involved in that firefight on that first day. How am I doing on time, by the way? Well, like how much? Am I halfway through? Okay. It's a long story. I got to try to keep it in proportion here. And they also claim in the new Netflix documentary that the Branch Davidians are throwing hand grenades at them. And yet we still only have 4 dead. They're just lying. It could not possibly be true. In a 90-minute firefight, that 4 ATF agents were killed when the Branch Davidians just opened up at them with fully automatic rifles, including a .50 caliber machine gun, and throwing hand grenades at them and the rest. It's just fantasy. It did not happen. And in fact, the first thing that did happen on the inside of the house, right around the time of the first fire being returned anyway, was that Wayne Martin, who was the second black man to graduate from Harvard Law School and was a religious scholar who was living there with the Branch Davidians, picked up the phone and called 911. And you can hear the audio in the new podcast and in the movie Rules of Engagement. Help, there's 75 men surrounding our building. They're shooting at us. We got women and children in danger. Call it off. But the local sheriff's department, well, first of all, criminals don't call 911, okay? Secondly, the sheriff's department had no ability to communicate with the ATF. So even though the Branch Davidians are begging for a ceasefire from the very first moments of the raid, they can't negotiate one. They're in no position to communicate with the ATF whatsoever. It takes more than an hour and a half for finally a college police officer was able to communicate with the sheriff's department and head out there and get in contact with the ATF. And then the negotiation to even get a ceasefire and the ATF's withdrawal from the house that morning was a jumbled mess. And people were still getting shot and killed even while they supposedly had ceasefires and all this because the communication was so absolutely poor. And they just had no backup plan whatsoever. The only thing to be thankful for about that raid is that they never gained access to the inside of the house, other than a couple of agents on the roof went into a room that supposedly was a gun storage room and very quickly came back out again. And this is where I think the question of the friendly fire comes in. But they were not able to do anything like a room-to-room sweep operation through that house. And thank God for that. There's no telling how many people would have been killed if they'd been able to get inside that front door in any real numbers at the beginning of the raid. So the Branch Davidians finally negotiate a ceasefire. The ATF's just out of ammo. And the Davidians let them come and get their wounded, and they don't snipe them. They do not shoot at them one bit. They're begging for a ceasefire the whole time. And once the ATF ceases fire, the Branch Davidians respect it. They get their men, and they leave the property. At that point, of course, first of all, the public relations machine goes into full gear. This is Charlie Manson. This is Jim Jones. These people are murderers. They somehow lured and tricked our ATF agents into raiding them and then ambushed them with fully automatic weapons. And our hero police of law enforcement have been forced to withdraw, and the crazy cult, and we're going to do something. And that was how the story started. And then the FBI came, pulled rank on ATF, took over the crime scene. Now, the official policy during the siege was to negotiate. And I think anybody here who's seen a Hollywood movie featuring a FBI negotiator knows exactly how this is supposed to go. The negotiator is good cop. And I respect you, and I'll work with you, and I'm a friend of yours, and I'll get you a pizza, and I'll get you some cigarettes, and what can we do to come to an understanding here? You have a guy with a bank full of hostages. What do? You placate them. You try to figure out how to save those people's lives. And to be honest, the FBI negotiators, I think, would have liked very much to negotiate an end to this thing. But they were never allowed to. And what happened was they brought in what's called the hostage rescue team. Now, the FBI has probably hundreds, certainly dozens of SWAT teams. The hostage rescue team is different. They're really not police. They're soldiers. They're trained as Green Berets or like Delta Navy SEALs. They're like second-tier special operations forces. So if you think about the Rangers or Delta or SEALs doing night raids on civilian homes in Afghanistan in the war, that's essentially the HRT's job. They're not police officers. They just cash checks that say DOJ on them. But they are essentially part of the special operations community. And here they have an enemy to destroy. And they'll be damned if they're going to let a bunch of sissy negotiators get in the way of that. These people are cop killers, and worse even than killing a cop, they disrespected our authority. They thumbed their nose at us, said they're not coming out to submit to arrest. And so they have to pay. So throughout the whole 51-day siege, almost 7 weeks, no matter what progress the negotiators made, the hostage rescue team would immediately sabotage it. They have a successful negotiation, the Davidians send out some women and children, the HRT shuts off the lights. They make a concession, David Koresh has a few more people come out, they spend the whole next day driving their tanks back and forth over the shallow graves of, as Peter Gent was shot on the water tower, and they would drive back and forth across Peter Gent's grave, pull down their pants and show their parts to the women in the compound through the window and this kind of thing, and do everything they could to sabotage the negotiations. Now we play the audio in the new podcast. Again, you can see it in Rules of Engagement. It's one of the more infamous parts of the story, I think, is how they started playing rock and roll, and really bad rock and roll. Nancy Sinatra, These Boots Are Made for Walking. I don't think that song is about growing up to be a federal cop and crushing the liberties of innocent civilians, but maybe. That was certainly how they played it, and they played Achy Breaky Heart, the worst song of the 1990s, over and over and over again. And that was how it kind of started, the psychological warfare operations against the Davidians. But then, of course, they quickly escalated. And pretty soon they're shining military-grade searchlights in all the windows all night long. And they're playing on like Spinal Tap, turn it all the way up to 11. They have on absolute full blast, and they're playing all night, night after night, day after day, the sounds of rabbits and horses being slaughtered, dogs being slaughtered. And they did this for weeks. I don't know if you guys saw the new Star Wars series Andor. This is how the evil empire tortures the lady. As they put headphones on her, she can't take off, and makes her listen to the sound of dying aliens, dying animals. I wonder if the writers for that were going off of Waco. And I'm telling you, like, even as a grown-ass man, it's not very nice listening to the sounds of rabbits and horses and dogs being cut to pieces. It's kind of left to your imagination, exactly what machine are they being put through here? And then you wonder, like, did they actually kill them just to record them for the Davidians? Were these freshly murdered dogs? That they did this just for the Davidians? What are they doing? And, of course, on the Davidian side, David Koresh said that God told him not to come out yet. And so to the vast majority of his followers, God said. If Koresh says God said, then God said, and we're not going. And so you had a situation where the Davidians were so dead set on their own point of view, instead of trying hard to work with that point of view and within the context of that point of view, the FBI could only just confront them. These people don't believe. These people don't have faith in Jesus. They're cop killers. They're methamphetamine dealers. They're Charlie Manson cultists. So nothing they say is sincere. All of it is just a ruse. Never mind whether God told David Koresh to wait. We don't even believe that his followers believe that God told them to wait. The whole place is just a den of criminals waiting to be held to account. It was the only way that the cops could see the situation. Meanwhile, inside the compound, everything, the house, everything that's going on outside is straight out of the book of Nahum, dude. It says right in Nahum, they're going to bring tanks. They're going to have these chariots of fire. It says right here in the book of Nabakabak. And it fits with this verse of Daniel and this psalm and this seal. Don't you see? And from the point of view of the Branch Davidians, the only way to understand what was happening to them was through the eyes of biblical prophecy. What does the Bible tell us about what is happening out there right now? That's our first sense. The other 5 or 7 come after that. So this is a bunch of civilians between a rock and a very hard place here, as you can see. So there's 2 things happening at the same time towards the end of the siege. The first one is the negotiators have been sort of end run. And there are 2 religious scholars who figured out they really understood the book of Revelation and they really understood what David Koresh was talking about. It's James Tabor and his friend Philip Arnold. And what they did was they went on the radio and they made sure the Davidians were listening. You know, turn your satellite dish 180 degrees if you're tuned in today, and then they would do it. That's how they kind of communicate. And Tabor and Arnold came up with this brilliant thing. And they say, look, it says in the Bible here that the Lamb of God has to accomplish X, Y, Z. And he must speak to all nations and all these things. But so our message to Koresh is, Koresh, nobody knew who you were. You had 120 followers. But everyone in the world knows who you are now. So if you will come out, and even from jail, after all, Paul wrote from jail. And so many great biblical figures wrote from imprisonment. You can write in prison in America, and you can tell the whole world what you have to say, but you can't do that if you're killed dead here. So now, and it says in the Bible, he shall speak for a period of a season or days, but days means years. Everybody knows that. And so, Koresh, this can't end here. And they won him over. And Koresh made a new deal. And he said, I am now going to write my interpretation of the book of Revelations. Before, God told me never to write it down. Now he told me to write it down. And of course, he doesn't have to learn how to be a good writer. All he's doing is giving his sermon, and his assistants are recording it on a dictaphone belt and transcribing it all. And the first seal is the longest seal. And they had completed it by April the 18th. And they told the negotiator, we'll send it out in the morning as a show of good faith. We'll get to work on the second seal tomorrow. The negotiator told them, don't worry, there's no time limit. You guys go ahead. And one of the surviving Branch Davidians brought out a CD, or maybe it was a floppy disk, with the sermon written on it, with the first seal. And not only did he have the first seal, but he had also written an outline of all 7 seals and where to copy and paste in Psalm this and Psalm that and passage this and Daniel that. They didn't have time to put them in yet, but he said, here's where I want to cite all these verses to make my point. And they had that whole outline was already done. In other words, it's just an unquestionable proof that he was living up to his agreement and was working diligently on writing the 7 seals. And he had promised that he would come out as soon as they were done. But at the same time that was going on, that Tabor and Arnold were solving this problem, the FBI had already lost patience weeks ago. And in the middle of March, they had settled on a tear gas attack with what's actually not tear gas, but CS powder. Much harsher than tear gas, banned by the Geneva Conventions. But it took them weeks to prepare the combat engineering vehicles which are essentially tanks, with the boom and sorry to use the same word in a different context in the same sentence, and with tanks, if you picture like an oxygen tank or a propane tank, it's like a metal bottle tank, full of the CS powder, diluted or mixed, dissolved in a chemical called methylene chloride. And they had to set all this up, and it took a while. But by the time the negotiators are coming to them on the 14th and saying, we have a new deal with Koresh, and then they're coming to them on the 18th and saying, gee, he swears he's written the first seal, and they're going to come out as soon as he's done with the 7th, they didn't want to hear it. They were already sunk cost fallacy on this tank attack. And they refused to even entertain the possibility that Koresh was dealing with them in good faith whatsoever. And so even though on the night of the 18th, the negotiator told the Davidians, there's no time limit, go ahead, get it done. And even though they knew that the Davidians had virtually zero drinking water left, and that the time was absolutely ticking on their, they had just collected some rainwater, and it was almost gone, and the feds knew it. And instead of waiting them out, which is what they said they were doing, it was 7 weeks already. The policy is we don't want to hurt these people. We just want to wait them out. And instead they went in the next morning with a massive tank assault and gas attack on the house. Now, very briefly here, not to defend Janet Reno, but to accuse the FBI. They lied to her. She was new and she was stupid, and they buffaloed her into it, to authorizing their attack. That's not really to acquit her, because after all, she could have just said no. I don't give a damn what arguments you give me. We are not doing that. And she didn't. She gave in to them. But they lied to her, and they said that they knew for a fact that David Koresh was beating babies. Not just, he's harshly punishing older children with spankings or something. Babies means under 1 year old, right? He's fighting them. He's kicking their asses in there. And they lied to her that the negotiations are going nowhere. We've made zero progress in weeks. And she just believed them. And they basically framed it where, lady, if you don't let us go in there and stop this man from beating these babies, then you are authorizing him to beat these babies. And that's what we're going to tell everybody too. And she gave in and told them, go ahead. Now she asked them, Jesus, is this stuff dangerous for children? They knew there were children in there. And they said, no, you know what? We actually know for a fact that one time a child was exposed to CS and there was no permanent damage. But as Dave Hardy points out, that kid almost died. That kid had to go to intensive care. And they barely saved his life. He was caught in the middle of some cops on a hostage negotiation. And he was 10 years old. Not under 5. Not a little toddler, a little baby. And Janet Reese said, well, if he's fighting the babies, I guess we got to gas the babies. So she told him yes. Now, the attack that they, 15 minutes. The attack that they proposed was we're going to put in a little bit of gas and a little bit of gas and they're going to come out. But there was an asterisk. If we claim that the Davidians have fired a single shot at us, we get to tear up the plan and go full bore. And that's exactly what they did. Within, I think, 6 minutes, certainly within 10 minutes of the beginning of the tank assault and the insertion of the gas, the powder dissolved in liquid, they went to full escalation and dumped every bit of the poison gas that they had into the building. And still the Davidians didn't come out. I asked David Thibodeau, why not, man? He said, because we thought we'd be shot if we came out, which is true. So he didn't come out. Now, the adults had gas masks, so it was extremely uncomfortable for them in there, but they could take it, I guess. The children, there were no gas masks that could fit the children, so they were all moved to the one concrete room and covered with wet blankets and towels. And that door was sealed shut, and that presumably kept them safe for most of the time. Eventually, of course, the cops just lost patience. And they went straight through the front of the house, knocked that door in to that one concrete room, and dumped, in the words of FBI spokesman Bob Ricks, massive gas in there. We knew it was women and children in there. We knew that their gas masks had to be failing, and we thought that their motherly instincts would kick in and they would get their children out of there, but apparently they don't care very much about their children. So we had that was the avowed policy. It was not even to torture the adults, but to torture the children to the degree that it would make their parents make a decision and change their mind and take them out of there. But of course, they were trying to protect their children. That was why they were in the concrete room. Now, I'm sorry I'm over time on this story here, but let me say very quickly that at the beginning of the raid, at 6 o'clock in the morning, one of the first things that they did was they gassed the buried school buses at the north end of the building, which was a storm shelter. And there was a trap door at the north end of the building where people could escape and get down to the buses, and then presumably they could have been rescued from there. They could have been taken out from there. The first thing the cops did was seal off that escape route with their gas. And the fire broke out at noon. And I believe that the preponderance of the evidence shows that it was the government that started the fire. It's their responsibility no matter what. If we go through our choices of options here, I think the idea that the Davidians deliberately set the fire to kill themselves in any mass suicide is virtually impossible. There's virtually no evidence whatsoever to say that. If some of them had made that decision for the others, fine, but the ones who survived had no indication that that was going on whatsoever, and despite all their claims, the FBI has never demonstrated that that is the case whatsoever. There's also an argument that the fire started accidentally, possibly from a lantern being knocked over or from the muzzle flash from a Branch Davidian firing at a tank, possibly igniting the fire. But the reason I think it's most likely that it was the government that did it is because they found 6 flashbang grenades, 2 at each of the origins of the fire. And they also found 4 different military-grade pyrotechnic tear gas rounds. 2 of them inside the building, 2 of them fired away from the building, but still indicating that they definitely had them. We don't know the negative of how many were not found. There's every reason to believe that when the gas attack failed, the FBI decided, fine, we'll just shoot them and burn them and kill them and end it. And here's how we really know. Is the FBI was flying a plane overhead with forward-looking infrared, which is designed for combat. It's designed for the Department of Defense's night vision laboratory for finding gunshots. And that's exactly what it did. And you can see the footage yourself in Waco, The Rules of Engagement, and there's even better quality footage in the sequel, Waco, A New Revelation, as well as the third film by Mike McNulty is called The Fleer Project. And you can see it is just beyond dispute, no matter what government-appointed expert claims. You can see in this infrared footage, air-conditioned black figures get out of the back of their Bradley fighting vehicles and fire machine guns into the house for more than an hour before the fire started. And all throughout the fire, you can see they're machine gunning the back of the house so no one can escape. And I got brand new, to me, from David Hardy, who again wrote the great book, This Is Not an Assault. When I was in the middle of interviewing him, he asked me, do you have the audio of Dick Rogers from HRT talking to Jeff Jamar during the fire? Do you have that from the helicopter? I said, no, I don't have that. What's that? He says, oh, it's on my YouTube channel. You can get it. I said, I'll do it. I'll rip it right in and I'll splice that right into our story here, which I did. The audio is on Dave Hardy's YouTube channel, and you can find it in the new podcast, where Dick Rogers, the commander of the hostage rescue team, is on the radio with Jeff Jamar during the fire. He says, we left the north end open so hopefully some children can escape, which again is not true. They gassed the north exit first thing. But he says, we left the north exit open so hopefully some children can escape. And Jeff Jamar, the FBI special agent in charge, says, hopefully nobody else. And then he held the fire trucks back. Gas, gunshots, fire, withholding the fire trucks. That's murder. At least second-degree murder. 76 counts. Now, of course, there's a big hoax in the court where they were all acquitted by the jury who said that it should have been the ATF on trial, not them. But they compromised with a couple of thin blue line types on the jury and found them guilty of a minor gun violation. The judge said, well, I'm going to throw out the gun violation because you can't convict somebody for using a firearm in the commission of a felony when you acquit them of the felony. But then he said, you know what, after the long weekend, I've had a chance to consider, and the federal prosecutor made the case, and maybe he got a phone call or a visit or had a nice round of golf and decided that, you know what, actually, here's what I'm going to do with your inconsistent decision, jury. I think that you mean to say that they did use a gun in the commission of a felony, that felony being murder of federal agents, so I'm going to sentence them as though you had convicted them of murder of federal agents with drug enhancements for the, again, completely imaginary methamphetamine lab and drug connection to this case, and sent the Davidians to prison for 15 years.
All right, for those of you in the KUIK audience, again, if you'd like to hear the rest of this, there's about 5 minutes left. Please look for Missouri Liberty Report Plus anywhere you get your podcast, and you can hear the end of this and some discussion afterwards. But to those of you in the Lake of the Ozarks audience, I appreciate you listening in. I appreciate the support of the station and Mr. Mundhausen, and I look forward to having you back each Friday evening right here on the Missouri Liberty Report. Have a great weekend, have a great week, and we'll see you all next week. All right, let's continue on here.
It's an absolute hoax and its own atrocity, although paling in comparison to the rest of the story. And interestingly, the Supreme Court actually struck that down and set a few of those people free after 5 years. Now, to wrap up here real quick, I know I'm out of time. On February the 28th, that's the anniversary of the raid. 20 years ago now, on the 10th anniversary, 2003, I was standing out in front of the Texas State Capitol protesting by myself with a sign that said, "Forget Waco." And that's because I think "Remember Waco" kind of sounds too corny and trite, right? Remember Waco. And also, I hate people, and I'm mocking them and criticizing them for having already forgotten Waco. They never gave a shit about Waco in the first place. And you know what people said to me? What do you mean, forget Waco? Right, because they had no idea what I was talking about. It was the 10th anniversary of the raid of a church on a Sunday morning that culminated in the murder of 80 people. And they didn't know or care about it at all. But I had a point, which was we're on the eve of Iraq War II. And an AP reporter came up to me and he said, "What's the point here, man?" You can't find it. They never ran it. But he took notes, and I explained to him, look what they're doing to Saddam Hussein here, man. They say he's crazy, so we can't negotiate with him. He's got illegal weapons, and he's bad to his own people. So we have no choice but to go in there, invade, and save the day. And it's all a lie, and it's nothing but Waco writ large. Don't you see? It's the same story. It's the same pile of lies that they used on the Branch Davidians. And Colin Powell's a 4-star general as our Secretary of State. He's not tough enough to send over there to read the riot act to little old Saddam Hussein? Are you kidding me? How about send his old friend Donald Rumsfeld over there? He's a gruff old Defense Department leader. I bet he could put Saddam Hussein right in line. Nope. Negotiations are going nowhere. We got inspectors on the ground. Negotiations are making no progress. He's beating the babies. We got to stop him. We're going. And so if Iraq War II is just Waco writ large, then that means that Waco is just Iraq War II writ small. They took a piece of property, not even this big, 100 miles from my front door, and they made it a foreign nation. And they made David Koresh into a foreign dictator. And then they sent the Delta Force in there to help the hostage rescue team to kill them all in a giant conflagration. And it's just the same damn thing again. And we keep doing it over and over again. And people wonder sometimes why I always mention David Koresh and I always mention Waco when the subject is Iraq, the subject is Iran, the subject is Russia, the subject is China. And the answer is because the same thing, man. They keep jerking your chain and you keep falling for it. Not you, but the broader public out there. This guy's so bad, so we got to send our heroes to stop him. But who's really the bad guys? And after what happened in Waco in 1993, how could anyone believe in this government and its legitimacy again? How could anyone believe that our government is the good guys set out to set right what went wrong? It's just not true. They're child killers. And they don't mind either. They're happy to. And the right wing was just as bad as the liberals on it. A lot of right-wingers now like to pretend they were good on Waco, but I remember different. The Branch Davidians had thumbed their nose at law enforcement. They deserve to die, them and their children and their grandmothers too. You're damn right. That was the consensus on the Republican right in 1993, on talk radio, on the Free Republic message board, and whatever you got. And so there should be a lesson there, that after this, we should be, pardon me, inoculated permanently against the poison, against the idea that we should trust and have faith in this government or their agents to do the right thing on anything, ever. The very least, knowing that they consider us the enemy, we can consider them ours, and we can at least stop being the demand for what they supply. And that's it. Thank you.
All right, so there's that. A great job by Mr. Horton there. And, you know, when he's talking about, Iraq War II, we have a lot of we had a lot of BS information on, as Buddha Queen talked about, Oklahoma City. So much misleading or just, misleading information or flat out lies or missing facts in these incidents. Ruby Ridge, the same way. And then he mentions Russia, right? And now we have the thing in Israel. They do these things, the state, the government, the military, does these things because, and they use the propaganda styles that they do in a continual fashion because they still work, because people still fall for them. Fall for the rhetoric, fall for the key words, and just believe what is being told to them by the media. Unfortunately, in the Israeli side of things, this Israeli Hamas thing, you have a lot of people who would normally be kind of anti-war that are going full tilt. Not understanding, again, that Hamas was funded by Israel, and in part because we fund Israel, funded by our taxpayer money. And it's just perpetual propaganda. Oh my God, if I could speak. But it's perpetual propaganda. They're propagandizing our youth. They're propagandizing, everybody that will fall for it. Everyone that will listen and regurgitate the rhetoric, the talking points. And if the mass majority of people out there continue to do this, then no, quit it. Sorry. But if the mass majority of people out there continue to act this way, then there's a problem. And it's not just Waco. It's not just Oklahoma City. It's not Ruby Ridge, the Ludlow massacre, Iraq War One, Iraq War Two, Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Hamas, COVID, 9/11, the Patriot Act. It's just a perpetual brainwashing, or as Sam and Trish like to say, brain dirtying, because if you wash your brain, you would clear yourself, you would clean yourself of those images, of the propaganda, of the outright lies of the state. But because too many people won't take the time to listen, to really listen, not just hear, but listen. And they won't take the time to do a little due diligence and to research a little bit. Because they're so afraid, it's as if they're super afraid, really, to just admit to themselves that their government has been lying to them for years and will continue to lie to them, and that they've been wrong. And listen, it's not always the most fun thing to do, to admit when you've been lied to. It's not always the most enjoyable experience that you'll have, that you've been lied to by the people that you voted for. But at some point, you have to come to those crossroads. You have to get to that bridge and cross over it and say, okay, I'm through. My relationship with my government is now over. I would like to divorce myself from government. Because until you do decide to do that, at some point you will fall for their fallacies again. You will fall into this propaganda pit, the black hole that is the state, that even the light can't escape. Just a mess, an absolute mess, an absolute pit of lies. And again, believing facts from people who knowingly lie when they're, out on the campaign trail, when they're talking to people, when they're being interviewed, they lie. And the people that listen, a lot of them go, this guy's not telling us everything. I mean, most people can say, oh, politicians are always lying. Fine. Take that statement, keep it with you. So when your government tells you we must do these things, we must take taxpayer money and send it to the Ukraine. We must fight off the Russians. We cannot let them capture the Ukraine. Or, hey, now we need several other, $100 billion to send to Israel. Or we need to fund this dictator. We need to fund this tyrant because, the enemy of our enemy is our friend. Take that thing where, all politicians are liars. Keep that sentiment and carry it and use it against everything you are being told by media and by politicians and bureaucrats and alphabet agencies. Keep that statement. That's a blanket statement. When government wants to tell you that they must do something or you must do something, the blanket statement is, well, man, these politicians are all freaking liars. Okay, great. Remember that. Remember that. And after hearing the audio that we just played here, remember that government has there are a lot of people in government, the Department of Defense, the Department of Justice, that clearly have no qualms about murdering a group of people to make themselves seem relevant, to continue their funding. And are those the type of people that you want to put your faith and trust in? Or would you rather put your faith and trust in yourselves and the people around you that you care about, that you know you can work together with to set things right, to make your area better than the next city over, or to make your state the best state in the union? Can you carry that torch? Or are you going to carry the water for, multi-million-dollar lying journalists and multi-million-dollar companies that employ these lying journalists, or these just egregiously biased journalists who tend to insert their bias into everything that they write or say? Is that who you want to carry water for? Is that who you want to stick up for? Is that who you want to imitate? Or is that who you want to emulate? Is that who you want to identify with? Is those sorts of folks who the only thing they do, the only work that they do is the work of liars and the work of the state? Or do you want to do the work of good people? Do you want to do the work of righteous people? And you don't, it's the thing. You can politically disagree with me, and I'm totally fine with that. But what are you doing? If you believe that you have a better solution than myself or somebody else, what are you doing about that? Are you getting together with like-minded people and initiating something? Or are you being a keyboard warrior? Are you getting on social media and just spouting hatred? Are you being, I'm going to just say her name. Are you being like a Jess Piper on, I'm going to say Twitter, okay? I'm old school. On Twitter, and you're stuck on one subject, education and school choice? Is that the type of person you're going to be? Or are you going to try to actually enact change? Enact change that is for the betterment of all people across the board. Not a certain set, not a certain group of people, not a certain community, not a certain skin color. Everyone involved. Every human being in your area, in your state, across the country. Is that what you're going to do? I have to pull this up because I found this hilarious today. Someone on Twitter posted something, and I just thought, well, I got to find the original post here because, So, did you know, this is from Lawrence Lambert on X, I guess if you want to call it. Did you know that every town and Mom's Demand have helped pass 114 important gun safety bills in 2023? That's what working together to end gun violence looks like. And I said that they mean that they're successfully tramping on people's natural right of self-defense. It also means we have an awful lot of politicians that don't follow the oath to the Constitution that they swore to uphold and defend. Okay? This is a response that I got. I should pull it up on my screen. Let me see if I can pull it up here just so the live stream viewers can see it. If I can type, because apparently I can't type to save my own life. Let me pull it up. Come on. Pull this up here, and then let me turn my display capture back on. So they respond with No rights enumerated in the Constitution, including those enumerated in the Second Amendment, are absolute nor unfettered. All rights have limits. Gun regulations are constitutional. We're advocating for common sense limits to protect both gun owners and everyone else. And I simply put, I don't remember my exact response. Let me see. Let me get it back up. Where did it go? I've lost my mind. So I put, so the part where it says shall not be infringed is beyond comprehension for you. But that's the kind of smarts, that's the type of people that I'm talking about. So they say they're doing, common sense limits to protect both gun owners and everyone else. Y'all seen that meme where it's like the guy is just squinting after somebody says something, the guy's squinting at him like, what did you just say? What do you mean, good sir? That, huh? He's looking at him like he's smoked a little bit of crack cocaine before he spoke. That's what I thought about this one. Because, and this falls on the education in this country, and these people believe, because, okay, first of all, enumerated from where? Our good friend Tom Martz loves to, and he's absolutely right when he says it, but our good friend Tom Martz like to say, that there are natural rights enumerated in the Constitution. Their vantage point is the government gave you those rights, so any laws or any gun laws that are passed either nationally or state, in the states, that's constitutional because they look at it as the government gave you the rights. But enumerated, to those of us with more than 2 brain cells to rub together, knows that those are rights enumerated in the Constitution, but they are natural rights. And I was talking to some guys at work today, and I was talking about the statement, and they're all rolling their eyes like, good Lord, what is these people's problems? And it's like, the deal is that you literally have to turn off the switch in your brain. So let's say you're at home, you're just minding your own business, it's 10 o'clock in the evening. Maybe you're getting ready to go to bed, or you're watching the 10 o'clock news and then getting ready to go to bed, and someone's trying to kick in your door to rob you or harm you. Instinct in humans or animals is one of self-defense and self-preservation. So when you think like these people do, and think that government gave you your rights, and we have these common sense gun laws, which aren't common sense in the least bit, then you have to shut the natural instinct of self-defense and self-preservation off, and then put your life solely in the hands of the state. That's what you have to do. Because you are saying, they are saying to themselves, and if you agree with this line or this mentality, or this line of reasoning, even though it defies all logic, but if you follow along with this line of reasoning and you accept it and you're okay with it, then you are in turn, in my eyes, you are flipping the switch off, and you're turning off the natural instinct mentally of self-preservation and self-defense. And you should then not call the cops. Well, I mean, I guess you can, but depending on what area you live in, now you have to hope and pray that they get there before you're either hurt badly or killed. And depending on where you live, you're out in the middle of the boonies, you got to call the sheriffs. It's a 15-minute, it's 15 minutes before they get there. 15 minutes for a criminal inside your house is an awful long time. If you choose not to own firearms and trust fully in government and go along with gun regulation or gun bans or whatever, good luck to you. But here's where we differ from these people. What's the name of their stupid group? Or why can I not think tonight? The Every Town and Moms Demand Action, right? If you're with those groups, then yeah, you should just, if you want to live your life that way, I'm okay with that. But where we differ from these groups is we say, you don't want to own a firearm, you want to depend solely on police or sheriffs or the government to protect you. That's your choice, and that is your right. But why? Because 99.9% of gun owners are not going to try to force someone else to own a gun and buy guns and buy ammunition. We're not going to do that. You don't want to do it? Fine. It's more for us, right? That's the way we're going to look at things. The way they look at it is they're uncomfortable with people owning a certain amount of guns or a certain type of gun, so they want to lord over you. Where we see it as, I don't want to lord over anybody. What I want to do is live my life and be left alone and do my own thing. And that's it. And they just can't deal with that. That scares the bejesus out of them, that people have this much freedom. And again, I just can't. They believe that their rights stem from the government. That's where this all starts. Not that they're natural rights enumerated in the Constitution, and it is a guideline. It tells the government, hey, you're supposed to protect these natural rights. This is a guideline for you. Here's what you should be doing to protect these natural rights. But, they just can't see it that way. They're just bereft of common sense. I would like to be less pessimistic about the future. I'd like to be more optimistic. But it seems to be, as generations pass, because people like Jess Piper and all these other people want to talk about education and get on their soapboxes and say how, try to defend public education, government-run schools, and why you should just keep dumping money into and just pouring money down a rat hole, because those people believe that all their rights come from government. And they are perpetuating this style of education, which the government loves because they're funding it, right? Winner, winner, chicken dinner for the state. This will get worse unless parents teach their kids, hey, by the way, your rights don't come from the government. They're natural. And that's, that's the way it is, kiddos. No matter what your teacher tells you, your rights do not come from government. You can look at it two ways. Was it St. Thomas Aquinas says natural law, natural rights? You can say God-given rights, or you can say natural rights. Whichever way you want to put that. However you want to word it. That your rights stem from the Creator or they're natural. Whichever way you want to look. If you're an atheist, if you're agnostic, if you're a religious type of person, you can look at it either way. At the end of the day, it's the same thing. All it means is that a group of people did not come together and tell you what your rights were. Because when a government is big enough to give you anything you want, they're also big enough to take it away from you. By the way, before I forget, if you've never been to GadsdenandCulpepper.com, I just got this shirt in the mail. I got 2 shirts, but I got to stand up real quick so you can see this. Sorry, I stood up and then I ripped I didn't rip it out, but I pulled the cord out of my headphones and I had to plug them back in. But anyway, my shirt says, political correctness is tyranny with a happy face. And on the picture is a smiley face made out of barbed wire. But if you've never gone to GadsdenandCulpepper.com, I'm going to pull this website up. Oh, wait a minute. Did I spell something wrong? I might have. Let me pull up this site here. That is what is going on. Did I spell it wrong? I probably did. Oh, I misspelled the whole thing because I'm so bright. But even this is not a paid endorsement by any means. I just want to show you something. So if I go to T-shirts, because they had a deal. It was buy 1 black shirt and get any other color shirt half off. So I got 2 T-shirts with shipping. It cost me like $26, right? I ordered it on. I think I ordered them Sunday night, and I got them yesterday, so 4 days later. But look at the price on their shirts. $13.95, $14.95. And there's so many good shirts. Like, here's the one I bought there. Let me show you the other one that I bought when I got to find it here. Oh, here we go. This one's $14.95, but it is a quote from Mr. Jefferson. I have sworn upon the altar of God eternal hostility against every form of tyranny over the mind of man. And on the back, it's got, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Again, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. But anyway, their prices are extremely good, and I've gotten shirts from them that I know are 5 to 6 years old, and they still look amazing. And they're just now starting to get holes in them, but they're great. They're great shirts. So, if you're looking for some good patriotic shirts, I would suggest going to that site and ordering. Because, like I said, the shipping is not extremely expensive. Sometimes you get a really cool sticker. Like I got one last time that said "Kill a Commie for Mommy." But they have such good stuff. And, like I said, the price that you pay compared to a lot of other sites is really good. It's hard to beat their stuff. But I digress. Anyway, I had to plug them because I always get such great shirts from them, and I never worry about quality. I never worry about anything. But they've got apparel, they've got hats, they got patches, flags, they got vinyl stickers, license plate frames, and I don't think I've ever really looked, but ooh. I mean, and as far as vinyl stickers, which I haven't looked at, but I'm going to have to order some of $1.50 a piece, $2.55 a piece. Like I said, they're really, really, really hard to beat on their stuff. But anyway, just a plug for Gadsden and Culpeper. I like to put the word out on good companies like that that do great things. Yeah, let me pull that back up, Voodoo, and let me put that in the. Let me put the link in the chat so everybody else can get a hold of it too. Let's see, copy, paste. There we go. But yeah, check them out. And then sometimes you get buy three. Yeah, like right now they're doing buy 3 tees, get 1 free. Buy 3 tactical patches, get 3 tactical patches free. But it's awesome. Absolutely love 'em. But getting back. But anyway, yeah, we live in a really upside down world right now as far as the propagandizing of people, the education of kids, teaching them that, again, their rights come from government, they're not natural rights that are enumerated in the Constitution. We got a lot of, as one guy at work used to say, the problem with this place is it's got a lot of problems. And that holds true for government. The problem with government is it's got a lot of problems. That guy used to holler that out. I'd be working right by him. He'd just screaming out, the problem with this place got a lot of problems. And I would just laugh because I thought it was hysterical. Because he didn't really have a filter, and it was funny to listen to him. And he said a lot of other things that aren't radio-friendly. And that was one of the radio-friendly things that Mike used to say really loud as he tested the transformers that myself and others wired up. All right, folks. I think that's going to take care of it for this week. Thanks for sticking around, watching that video from Scott Horton. And I know Scott's probably not watching this because he's quite the busy guy, but I do appreciate, I posted that on X earlier today, and I appreciate that Scott reposted it. And now he did that, and then my subscriber numbers jumped up on YouTube. I think I ended up with 4 new subscribers within a couple hours. So I appreciate Scott Horton doing that, reposting that. Because I did, put him in the post on X, but I just that was really cool that he reposted that for me, and even though I don't know the guy. So with that being said, not next Friday, but the Friday after, I'm hoping to have Andy Maidman on with me. He did say any Friday after next Friday he should be available. I did get a call back from Justin Sparks, L.A., and Justin is out of town right now, I guess. So he's waiting for him to get back to me or get back to him to try to set up a date for an interview. I also contacted Holly Jones's L.A. again to try to see if she'll come on sometime this month. I'm not holding out much hope because of the holidays and everything else. And I mean, Christmas falls on a Sunday this year, and New Year's Eve falls on a Sunday this year. So those 2 Fridays, I'll more than likely be doing shows both Fridays. Probably just be me on or by myself on here, and that's fine. If I don't have a lot of viewers those evenings, I completely understand with the holidays coming around, but I plan on doing shows the whole month and not taking any Fridays off, but we'll see what happens. Actually, I think Or is New Year's Eve? No, I can't. Now, see, now I'm feeling dumb now. I got to look at a calendar because I'm saying these days, Christmas and New Year's. Oh, Christmas is on a Monday. Why am I thinking? I don't know what I'm thinking. Anyway. So yeah, the 2 Fridays before I should be on doing a show. I can't think right now. I be tired, yo. Anyway, thanks again, folks, for joining me tonight, and thanks for sticking around to hear again Scott Horton's great speech on the, as I'd like to call it, the government-sponsored massacre of Waco. And then again, if you haven't watched Waco, the rules of engagement, I suggest that you do check that video out. Again, I know it's been 30 years, but that's one of those instances, those, dark marks in American on our history here in America that we cannot forget about, so we don't let it happen again. Should have never happened the first time, and it sure as hell shouldn't happen again. All right. With that being said, again, folks, thanks so much for joining me this week. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Also, don't forget to check out molibertyradio.us, especially on Sunday nights from 6 to 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Sam and Trish Britton, Off the Cuff Radio. Always good information on the show. You never just log in there and die of boredom. It's always good stuff. Also, Rogue Politics, the podcast Rogue Politics. Please be sure you check them out. And they should have some upcoming shows pretty soon. I know they've been gathering a lot of data. They did announce they've got some shows coming up, so be on the lookout for them. If you haven't listened to them yet, go back and listen to some of their old stuff. It's still relevant, still important. But they do have upcoming shows. Also, mofree.org. Sign up for the email list so you get notified of upcoming live streams, which they should be doing one tomorrow, Saturday, December 2nd. I believe Twitch, Rumble, Odyssey, YouTube, 7:30 on Saturday nights. Also, they are looking for those of you who will be traveling or want to go to the Capitol to support the Gold and Silver Bill, do their knock and shock. January 9th is the first date they will be traveling up there. I myself am probably not going. I don't think I'll be making that one. What I plan to do as of right now, this is tentative, of course, is I've been talking to Tony Lavasco, Representative Lavasco. He always pushes civil asset forfeiture bills. And so once he files his civil asset forfeiture bill, I will print it out, go over it, and then I will plan on taking a day off of work and going to the Capitol and walking the House floor and trying to drum up support for that bill. Do I think that I'm going to be ultra successful? No. But it will be a great learning experience for me. And I want to push good legislation, of course, but I also want to gain the experience and knowledge of going by myself, since I've gone several times. It's 4 or 5 times with the Missouri Freedom Initiative. Now I'm wanting to try to do it by myself. Talk to LAs, talk to reps, whoever I can talk to, and see how much support, because I believe it's a good bipartisan bill. There are people on both sides of the political aisle that don't like civil asset forfeiture. So it's one of those things, maybe I can get enough support to just get the bill moving further along and garnering more support for it. But I do not want to take away from what anybody else is doing. I do not expect, I know a lot, like the Missouri Freedom Initiative, they're going to pick, they normally pick 4 or 5 bills and try to work those bills. And I don't expect anyone to drop what they're doing for them. And, you know, I'm not trying to split things up like, hey, join my team. That's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just letting you know. And then once I do it, maybe I'll just, the show, that Friday after, maybe I just come on and talk about my experience. So you kind of get, firsthand information from me. And so if you're thinking about doing the same thing, you can listen to what I did, and maybe you'll come up with a better way of saying things or doing things or whatever. Because I'm going to be far from perfect when I do this, but I find the notion entertaining, and I find it kind of exciting to try to take that step and just do it on my own and see what happens. But that's what I'm working for. That's what I'm looking to do. Again, I don't want to take away from gold and silver, so I'm not going to be out there, trying to entice people to do what I'm doing. This is more of a self-educational thing that I want to do. But again, January 9th, they've said it a couple times. That's the day they're looking to go for their first knock and shock. Gold and silver is the bill they're really wanting to get done this year and get it through to the House and get it done well before, 2 days before, on the House floor for a vote before, the second to last day of the session. So that's what they're looking to do. And so if you want to join them, I think you'd enjoy yourself if you went up. The groups keep getting bigger as time goes on. I think the last time they went up, 30 people were there. So let's double that. Get them to 40, get them to 50. I think that would be outstanding. But I have made up my mind that the first trip I go on up there this year will be on my own, and to gain that knowledge and experience. And that is nothing against anybody else and what they want to do. Nothing personal. It's just, that's the mindset I'm in right now. Who knows? I might regret it instantly after I do it, but we'll see. I think I need to step out on my own, see what I can do on my own, learn from it, build on it, and go from there. Anyway, with that being said, thanks again, everybody. Greatly appreciate the viewership. Make sure you check out MOLibertyRadio.us, Rogue Politics Podcast, and MoFree.org, and support them and learn something. Because believe me, I'm just like everybody else. I still got a lot to learn on a lot of these topics. So, have a great week, everybody. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you all next Friday right here on the Missouri Liberty Report.
Want more freedom? It starts with you. Join us next week on the Missouri Liberty Report and find out how you can get involved to take back your state.
All right, thanks again, everybody. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Tenacious Tortoise, Warrior Class 3, Voodoo Queen, Wilderness Gal, Dennis Payne, John Doe. Anybody else that I am forgetting? I don't think so. All right. Appreciate you all being in the live chat as usual and sticking through that almost hour of Scott Horton's presentation there. Again, he did a wonderful job. And it's, again, you get angry as you go through it and hear the information, but it's good. It's a good refresher for those of us out here who really like liberty and would like to see everybody get more of it. And then you got the clowns on X that, post their nonsense, and you just have to fight against it. You have to keep going. You have to keep fighting. And that's all there is to it. But anyway, folks, really appreciate each and every one of you. Have a great week. Have a great weekend. Be safe. And we'll see you next Friday. Why am I not seeing the thing I need to see? There it is.